have as our guest MaryAnn Lippert. MaryAnn Lippert is from Pittsville, right? I guess it's the center of Wisconsin.
You bet.
And MaryAnn is the 70th Assembly District Representative, and that's most of Wood County and the northern third of Portage County. We'll be talking about a lot of different things. We had Marlon Schneider on, a veteran of 32 years in the Assembly, talking about the state budget and other matters, and we thought it would be a good idea to have the Republican version, and more specifically, MaryAnn Lippert's version, another voice in central Wisconsin. And the reason that we do this is because my entire broadcast career has been one in which I make sure that all voices are heard on every subject as a news reporter and also as an on-air interviewer. And then we're continuing that practice here. Now, this program also is not one that is necessarily adversarial. We try to get the information out, and occasionally I may take the other side, as I have always done throughout the years, trying to get all of the information that you can possibly get out there as a result of the conversations that I've had with people on the air. And we may do that today. We won't get into any lengthy debate about anything, but the aim is to get the information to you. Now, MaryAnn Lippert, why don't you first of all tell us a little bit about yourself to refresh people's memory who may have voted for you and may have voted against you in the last election. I guess we should mention that you took over a seat that Don Hazenerl had. Don had been active in the Assembly for, I believe it was 26 years before he decided to not run for re-election, and as a result the seat became wide open and you ended up the victor. Now, what kind of background do you have?
Well, what I brought to the legislature was over 20 years experience as a community health educator. I have worked in hospitals, clinics, public health, the research setting, and really I've tried to focus on finding common ground and helping to advocate for policies that help people make healthy decisions. This experience has really, bringing this experience to the legislature has been really interesting because there's no one else that's had that kind of background. And so I really had an opportunity to have my target group for education be my colleagues in the legislature.
Now, I would imagine that as a result of you being highly educated and interested in education, health education issues, and in health issues, period, that you may have gotten a lot of support in your election from the medical community.
Well, I think that when people in central Wisconsin looked at the types of experiences I had, people within the health community felt that I could be an advocate for some of the things that go into being a healthy community. And I've developed over the years, I've developed a number of good professional relationships with people in public health and other health-related endeavors.
As long as we're on health, and this is always kind of a free-form conversation that we have with people, as long as we're on health, you, before you were elected, were appointed by Governor Thompson to a committee involved in deciding where the money goes from the funds that were received, are being received from the tobacco industry.
That's correct. Governor Thompson...
And what is that called again, the committee?
Governor Thompson appointed me to the Wisconsin Tobacco Control Board. It's made up of individuals from throughout the state that bring a variety of experience to the table. There are several physicians, there's people from the retail community, also people from education, and also I serve with several of my colleagues in the legislature on this group. Our role has been to develop a plan for tobacco prevention for the state of Wisconsin, and then to allocate the resources that are given to the board by the legislature so that plan is carried out.
Okay. Now, as long as we're talking about this, the next logical thing that comes to my mind is the proposal by Governor McCallum to use the tobacco money to try to patch up the way that things are as far as budget deficit is concerned, and What is your official opinion about that? Should it be done? McCallum is a fellow Republican, and I think that you have made some statements in the past that kind of indicate that you don't think it's really a good idea to touch that money.
Well, the idea behind using the tobacco settlement to fill the budget hole is something that the governor first proposed, but was also embraced by the Joint Committee on Finance as well as the Senate Democrats. The Assembly Republicans were the only body that chose, in their version of the budget, not to spend the full amount of the tobacco endowment. In fact, I'm very pleased that my colleagues in the Assembly voted to maintain $125 million in that tobacco endowment. Is that the best situation? No, it's not. I would have preferred that we not touch the tobacco money, period. And really, there's two reasons for that. And the first reason is a fiscal reason. To me, it's not a good idea to take a one-time payment, a one-time windfall, and spend it all at once in the first year. It's just not smart from a fiscal perspective. The second reason I think it's not a good idea to spend all of the tobacco settlement money is because that money was first brought into the state because of tobacco use. And from an ethical standpoint, I believe that we have an obligation to spend those funds on preventing kids from starting to smoke, as well as helping people who would like to quit achieve their goal of quitting.
How many other people are on this board determining what happens with that money?
I believe we have 17 or 18 members right now.
And how often do you vote? I mean, how often do you meet?
The Tobacco Control Board meets quarterly as a full board. However, there are periodic meetings of various task forces. I think it's important to keep in mind that the role of the Tobacco Board is not to be micromanaging things. Rather, the role of the board is to set big picture strategic direction, allocate the funds, and then assure that that big picture strategic direction is being followed.
Well, involving allocation of funds, can the board get involved? You're probably aware of the fact that the Wood County Board and other boards around the state of Wisconsin have voiced a desire to get some of that money, have the state share some of that money with county governments, because supervisors from various counties do believe that it would be proper because they feel that there were some related costs that counties had as a result of tobacco smoking and use. And this is tobacco money that's supposed to sort of reimburse the state for that kind of expense, and also to educate people so that not as many people smoke in the future, to create more costs like that. Mm-hmm. What is your feeling about sharing some of that money with county governments?
Well, you can't share money that's not there. And if we adopt the joint finance and the Senate Democrat solutions to the budget crisis, there will be no tobacco endowment left. However, there still is a verbal commitment to continuing to fund the Tobacco Control Board at a level of $25 million per year. I think it's very important for listeners to know that a portion of what the Tobacco Control Board allocates comes back to local health departments and local tobacco-free coalitions. So there is money coming back to the local level right now, and I anticipate that continuing. However, I don't think that money coming back follows the intent that some leaders in county government had in the future in terms of funds coming back to, for example, help provide nursing home care, to help provide the money to keep county nursing homes operating. I think there was value in the philosophy of using some of that money to reimburse for medical assistance costs. However, it doesn't appear to be anything that's feasible at this point in time.
How many organizations are there that are getting or may get funds to help to fight tobacco use?
All 72 counties in Wisconsin receive funds through their health department to conduct tobacco control activities. In addition to the county health departments, funds are also allocated to a number of other organizations to do various work. For example, the Center for Tobacco Research and Intervention at the University of Wisconsin Medical School receives money to run the statewide quit line, the toll-free number that people can call if they're looking for resources on quitting tobacco. They have also made available a number of mini grants related to tobacco cessation, one of which went to the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point in their health enhancement program to look at strategies for helping young adults, college student age people, quit smoking. So the money is coming back to local communities. It just may not be coming back in the form that county board supervisors first envisioned probably 4 or 5 years ago. And again, if the endowment money or the vast majority of the endowment money is spent to plug the budget hole, it's really kind of a moot point.
We're talking with MaryAnn Lippert, and MaryAnn is the 70th Assembly District Representative from the central Wisconsin area. We'll be talking more with MaryAnn and specifically get into her views on the budget that has been proposed and the current situation as far as the committee that's working on it to try to come up with some kind of a compromise so that the budget can go into effect. I'm Gary Morgan. Thanks for watching. This is Gary Morgan. We're doing a program on this station called The Gary Morgan Show. I hope that you'll be right out there watching as we have conversations with senators, assembly representatives, organization leaders, entertainers, news figures, and others who have some unique insights, details you need to know, or just some really great stories to share with you. We'll be bringing it to you for your information and also for your enjoyment, because we'll do our very best to not only be informative, but more than that, we hope to occasionally bring a smile to your face as well. It'll be right here on The Gary Morgan Show. Why don't you join us on this channel? Please tune us in. And we have another segment with MaryAnn Lippert. Today we're talking with her about a lot of different things, and during the first part of the show we talked about health issues. Now we're going to switch over to the budget that's being debated at great length and has been for some time, that Governor Scott McCallum recommended to the Senate and Assembly. And it went through the Senate, and a version came out of the Senate, and And right now, it's as we're talking anyway. It's in a committee that's supposed to come up with a compromise. What's that committee called?
It's called the Conference Committee, and it's made up of 4 members from each party, representatives from both the Assembly and the Senate.
Now, let's talk first of all with some of the proposals that come to your mind about what did come out from Scott McCallum in his efforts to try to patch up what's been going on for a while, and then got the state into a situation where we're going in the hole. What were some of the proposals that come to your mind that you want to talk about?
Well, the budget process is a very long process, and this budget repair bill process is kind of a microcosm of the total budget process that we went through last year at this time. It seems like budgets keep going on forever in this job. The governor originally started out with a proposal of which the centerpiece was the eventual elimination of shared revenue. The Joint Committee on Finance, which is made up of 8 Republicans, 8 senators, 8 Republicans, 8 Democrats, 8 from each house, the Senate and the Assembly, tinkered with that budget and came up with a proposal that did not totally eliminate shared revenue, and actually called for no decrease in shared revenue during this current calendar year and a much smaller decrease in the future. I'd say that was kind of the centerpiece of what they did. Both of those proposals did take all of the tobacco endowment money. Next, the budget went to the Assembly, where we looked at a variety of ways to trim spending and maintain that commitment to not eliminating shared revenue. We were also able to, through some aggressive spending cuts, able to restore $125 million in that tobacco endowment fund. The Senate got the budget next, and they chose to embrace the idea of not cutting shared revenue at all on into the future, as well as proposed some new spending programs, as well as some additional spending for programs that had previously been cut. Now, the budget is currently in a conference committee. What I like to do when I look at the budget is something that the conference committee unfortunately hasn't really been able to do very well, and that's look at what we agree on. I am very, very pleased that the governor and the Assembly have all taken the lead in saying, first of all, no new taxes. Second of all, not cutting K through 12 education, maintaining our commitment to the senior prescription drug program, as well as maintaining our commitment to funding programs for disabled children. Now, I'm even more pleased that the Senate was able to join us with those bottom line protection things. I think that's a good thing. What we have to be able to do in the conference committee, however, is come to some understanding regarding the fact that we are in a budget pickle, and if we continue to put off this day of reckoning, it's going to be even worse in the next year of the biennium. So I'm really looking for the conference committee to come up with some reasonable solutions where we do reform state government, where we look at changing and updating that partnership between the state government and local municipalities so that we can have these savings beginning now, which means we'll be in better shape going into the next biennium.
Do you think that there's going to be any action that takes place before the November elections?
Well, I certainly hope so. I believe that the Assembly has come to the table with some ideas, with some compromises, and Senator Qualla has chosen to say no. We need to have some movement on both sides. We need to have both sides willing to come to the table with compromise positions in order in order to get this going. I think that that we on the Assembly side, we on the Republican side, have been making efforts. There was just a proposal earlier this week related to some of the cuts that were proposed in agency budgets. What we proposed was for those agency budgets in which we were within 1% on proposed cuts, to take the Senate version, which was in most cases less of a cut, and Senator Qualla said no.
Well, I'm kind of wondering, again, it's just something that comes to my mind. Senator Qualla has, at least in the view of Republicans, been a stumbling block in a lot of different ways over the years. Do you think that he's just a scapegoat, or do you think that he actually is sometimes kind of stubborn?
Well, Senator Qualla is the leader of the Senate Democrats, and he's their main spokesperson. And we seem to have a situation where Assembly Republicans are offering ideas. We're coming up with ideas for reform. We're coming up with ideas for compromise, and they're not being accepted by the Senate. To me, the buck stops with the leadership.
Well, on the other side, and we have to be fair about this, Democrats always point at the leaders on the Republican side as being problems. This is usually, quite often, just a kind of a political thing where people throw these accusations around, and sometimes they're accurate, and sometimes there's some truth to them on both sides. And there are some people out there who really aren't aware of that, and it's sometimes just a political rhetoric. I'm not saying that that's what's going on right now, but it's just another fact about politics.
Well, we've known about this budget deficit since November, and it is now early May. I believe that the taxpayers need to make their voices heard and let the conference committee know that they're tired of this, that they expect results. You can't do this in a business. You can't put things like this off in a family. You have to deal with these fiscal realities up front. And putting them off doesn't make matters better, it makes matters worse.
That's absolutely true. And I've said many times over the years that there's way too much debate that goes on regarding any budget that's come across on both sides, and a lot of finger pointing that goes on both sides, and there's never enough cooperation between the two parties. And it's all comes down to political, rather than what's best for the state and for the people of the state. You agree on that?
I think the nature of politics is that it's going to be political. However, there does come a time when we need to look at what's the best thing to do for everyone, and that everyone is the taxpayers and the citizens of Wisconsin. Again, I guess I just think that we need to continue to bring ideas to the table. That's a factual process. If those ideas are rejected, that's a fact also.
Let's switch gears just a wee bit. There were some University of Wisconsin Stevens Point students who were held at an airport because of suspicious names, and I guess that they were on their way to Washington, D.C. to do some demonstrating. But they had apparently suspicious names, and there's been a lot of security going on at airports, not only in central Wisconsin, but all over the country as a result of what happened on September 11th of last year. What kind of security measures have taken place in the state capitol?
Well, in the state capitol, for approximately 6 months, we had limited access to the building. There were only 2 entrances that could be used, and there were police officers stationed at those entrances, checking everyone. We now have an ID system for all state capitol employees, and you do have to show your ID if that's appropriate. We have a new security system to get in after hours. We no longer, however, have limited access through limited entrances. All the entrances on the ground floor are now open, but Capitol police officers are stationed throughout the rotunda and keeping a pretty close eye on everything and everybody. I feel very safe there. I don't feel unsafe at all.
Has there been any, at least that you've noticed, any less of a quantity of people who come through as tourists?
Oh, boy.
Or have you ever paid attention to that? I'm sure that you're pretty busy while you're down there, and that's not something that's most uppermost on your mind.
Yeah, well, you know, at this time of year in the spring is when a lot of school groups come through, and it seems as busy as ever with fourth graders. So it doesn't appear that there's been any type of slowdown to me.
Well, we've been talking with MaryAnn Lippert, 70th Assembly District Representative from central Wisconsin, and more specifically from Pittsville. And we have a lot of other issues that we'd like to talk with MaryAnn about, and we'll do that in another show. So I hope you come back for that, because we enjoy what MaryAnn has to say. I'm Gary Morgan, and thank you very much for being out there.